I'm gonna give you some of my best kept secrets when talking blending and eyeshadow. First thing, you gotta prime the lids. I don't care what eye look you're doing, prime those bad boys. Next, pick a good blending brush. You're gonna wanna look for a brush with longer bristles and is not very dense. Basically, that means it's got a lot of movement compared to a brush that has really short bristles, is very dense, and doesn't have a lot of movement. Then you need a transition shade. This is gonna be a light, preferably matte shade. Oftentimes it's neutral. You guys, you can even use setting powder. It's gonna go right on top of that primer, but this is gonna start to create the base for your eyeshadow look, and it's really gonna help all of your other shadows blend a little bit more smoothly. And depending on personal preference, this color might go just in the crease or all over the lid. Next, when you start adding color, this is crucial. Make sure you hold your hand very far back on the brush. That's gonna give you a softer blend and a softer application. What often happens is we put too much product on our eye way too soon, and it's just very difficult to blend it out, and we end up kind of a muddy mess. In the crease and in the outer corner is where you're gonna spend a majority of your time when creating eye looks, but you're gonna do these nice windshield wiper motions, and then you can blend it upward toward the brow. Make sure you leave just a touch of space, but keep going with those windshield wiper motions. You can even do a touch of circular motions, but keep going with those windshield wiper motions until you have a smooth gradient of color. When using darker shades, you do have the option again to use a more dense brush, but for me personally, if you're a beginner with eyeshadow, I say stick to a small blending brush. That way you can add little bits of color at a time and blend it as you're applying versus packing on way too much pigment and then you can't blend it out and you don't know what to do. Oftentimes when applying eyeshadow, this is the part of the program where we stop. You're not done. There's not a smooth gradient of color here. So you're gonna wanna spend some time blending this toward the middle of the lid, but try to keep it to the outer third, blending it in towards the crease and then up towards the brow to really smooth this out. Again, this is where you're gonna spend a majority of your time, but you don't wanna stop blending until you have a nice transition of color versus all pigment in one spot on your lid. And probably my next tip, don't move on to the next shade until you're happy with how you've blended out the current shade you're working with. If you're struggling to blend it out, you have a couple options. If the color is too dark and you don't want to add any more pigment, but it's still a harsh blend, you can take your brush on a paper towel and dust off the pigment and then keep blending. This is going to allow you to blend out the color without adding any more pigment to the lid, but you're still going to be able to sit and blend it out. Another option to help with blending, if that outer corner is too dark and you don't want to add any more color, go back to that crease shade and use that to help create a softer blend. That's going to be a lighter color than the outer corner. It's going to help blend it out without adding too much depth to the outside. At any point, you can switch to a more dense brush. It is going to probably speed up your application by just a touch because it's going to add on more pigment. But remember, too much pigment too soon, it's going to be harder to blend out. So until you feel comfortable with a nice blending brush, I say stick with that before moving to a more dense brush. Hopefully you find these tips helpful in boosting your confidence in eyeshadow application. I can't wait to see what looks you create.